girls, and they're also just stepping their feet into Tanzania. We want to know what do they want to do differently, because there are a lot of organizations in this space. And last but not least is Dr. Hadija Mkocha. Dr. Hadija Mkocha runs the ICT incubator at the University of Dar es Salaam. So as you can see, I have all female panelists. This is just to show you that it is actually possible when we calibrate our effort right, it is possible. So karibuni sana. And just to set us on the stage, I would like first to set the agenda and to have a clear ground on first what is the digital inclusion. I'll just ask that, Navina, you are working in advocating for women, digital resilience and digital inclusion. But what is that digital inclusion?
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, DLAB, for organizing this. So briefly, speaking of digital inclusion, as for us, Police, who works in Uganda, and right now we are bringing our intervention in Tanzania and working also at the Pan-Africanist level, for us, digital inclusion is just a matter of equal opportunities in accessing digital platforms, opportunities for both men, male and female. We are putting more efforts to women because our statistics show that women have lesser accessibility to the internet or to the digital platforms compared to men. So, as simple, to me, that is digital inclusion. Thank you.
Okay, so having a balance in a digital space. The CEO and the founder of the media space, Asha, Media Convergence. Asha, what are you doing differently? As we have seen, the statistics is they call for us to act and act now, like urgently. So what are you doing differently so that we're including more women into the digital space so that they can reap the fruits of digital economy?
You can hear me now. So yeah, thank you very much. I would like to say that we are not really doing it differently, but adding efforts too. So we have a two-way approach. We have an offline approach and we have an online approach. An online approach, we consistently do an advocacy awareness through our dedicated pages of Women at Work Tanzania to make sure that people get to know what you need to know in order to access the online spaces, in order to protect yourself, and how to protect your mentality and your mental health, I would say. So the other thing I would say, in the offline advocacy, we do a lot of work offline than online. Sometimes it seems like we're doing a lot of work online, but I would say it's almost 30 to 40% of what we're doing. Offline, we work with a lot of organizations. So when we talk about challenges, which a lot of women incur, it's usually in platforms which are foreign. We don't own those platforms. We are talking about maybe Facebook, we are talking about Instagram, we're talking about Twitter. And right now, I would proudly say that, for instance, we've been working with Meta right now for almost a year. And I've been in 6 different committees of policy review, which looks at content differently. All those content promoting safe spaces and digital inclusion of all people, especially for women. The other thing is just use it too, na ningependa kuongea kwa Kiswahili. Hatujaitangaza vizuri. So on the 2nd of December this year, there is an organization, an initiative which has started. It is called Stop NCII, meaning that stop spreading non-consensual intimate images. So the platform, we are the only country right now. Media Convergence is the only country is the only organization in the country which has partnered with Meta in collaboration with Stop NIC. Yani hiyo ni organization ambayo inataka kujitahidi kulinda mabinti na wanawake haswa kwenye picha za utupu zilizosambaa bila ridhaa yake. So there is a new technology known as hash technology. That technology, when you take a picture using your phone, using that technology, you can hash that image of yours, whether it's nude or what, you can hash it. No matter where it is spread, it can't leave your device. When you post it on social media, it won't accept because it has been identified. But of course, it's limited right now to 3 platforms. We're talking about Facebook, we're talking Instagram, we're talking about WhatsApp. We will do a proper campaign around that. I'm just giving you an example of the initiatives we do, and it's been for a long time. The other thing we've done is that we reach out to stakeholders. We understand that as Media Convergency, we are a very young organization. Kwa hiyo tunafahamu, we need people who have been in the space, who are doing wonderful work, and maybe we add on to what they are doing already. We partner with organizations which we identify are doing in the space. So right now, like recently, we've also partnered with members of parliament. Recently, we'll be launching a report where we've done, it's an overview, just a survey, an overview of online gender-based violence on women in politics. The findings are really wonderful. Watch out for that report, it's gonna be interesting. So I'm doing a lot of things, but with a limit of time, let me just end here. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I like the fact that it's not about only including more women, but how can we protect while they're online. Thank you. I would like to move to Dr. Hadija, as the statistics shows that it's only 1/3 of women here, female in the core ICT, are pursuing ICT related subjects. And I wanted to know, what are you doing to recruit more female in the ICT incubator at the college?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, and thank you, Dilab, for this opportunity. As she has introduced me, I've been working with youth here at the university, especially at CoICT, for more than 10 years now. And yes, the numbers have been, especially for women, have been really low. But the problem doesn't start here. If you don't have women to recruit, then who are you going to recruit anyway? If they're not there, they're not there. So what we did was to go a little low, go where the catchment area is. So although we are basically dealing with university students, we've also come up with programs for ladies in secondary schools. We have the Smart Girls program. This caters for secondary school children. And to assure that there is inclusion, we've always chosen schools where we know they are very they have plenty of resources. Let's say schools like Feza, they are very exposed. They are very literal digitally and things like that. And then we've gone to schools where we know they don't even have computer labs. So we've brought all these girls together and have them work in teams and develop ICT solutions. So these girls are getting exposure, but we didn't end there. We even have programs to introduce kids from 5 years old of age to 15. So early childhood education scholars up to primary scholars, they have programs where they come here for fun and games, but the aim is to introduce them into what we call STEAMs, science, technology, engineering, math, and arts. And these programs have sparked so much interest, it has reached a point where we can't even accommodate the request to do this. So we thought it would be nice to start from the very early age to get to educate young children and get them interested in science subjects, get the parents involved, and hopefully these will get interested to come and study science subjects at the university level. Thank you.
I think we need to a round of applause to Dr. Hadija. As she rightly said, if we don't have them, you cannot have them enough to recruit. I know the struggle we have even with the Masters in Data Science Scholarship. We have also been trying to award to more female, but the challenge has been the dropout during the course of the program. Due to different other reasons, they drop out. So there's still, I understand the challenge in that we need to catch their mind early, and the right way to do is to go also at the lower level, secondary schools and at the primary school. I'd like to turn to Nuria. Nuria, I know you are just stepping your foot into, in Tanzania, but I know you have done a lot in the other parts of the world. I wanted to understand, for a better digital inclusive future, especially for in Tanzania, what do you want, what are you planning to do differently?
Thank you. So for Malala Fund, I would like to first correct you a bit. So we are working to change lives of girls from the age of which they are starting their preschool until they finish Form 4. So the main aim is to ensure that we are supporting CSOs, advocates, activists who are working to address barriers of girls' education. So what we are planning to do differently, we identify ourselves as feminist funders. The meaning of that is that we want to dismantle all the patriotic system that hinder girls from getting their basic education. Because for us, first, we believe that a proper education is what will make a girl to be competitive enough to get into the digital world, to access and get benefit from the existing digital technologies, and so that they can improve their life. So we are a feminist funder, therefore we are supporting a number of CSOs globally, but in Tanzania we've just started in March. So we are now soon going to start working with some CSOs who are working on education, but mostly girls' education. And worldwide, we have been supporting all interventions that countries have been trying to address in challenges of girls' education. For example, when COVID-19 came in, we gave out around $3 million for countries that we support in order, as an addition funding, to support their engagement in supporting girls so that they can get education. So there were a number of initiatives, from getting education content to radios, developing digital skills of girls so that they can access the materials in the mobile phones, computers, and all other challenges. Other places, they were given tablets and all other intervention around that. But we also worked with Apple to do a research which was mainly focusing on the challenges, the digital skills that girls are facing, so that they can be able to join into the competitiveness and of the digital economy. So in summary, those are just a few things that we have done currently. Yeah.
Thank you. So it's not about giving them education, but the focus is providing the quality education. I like that. So I'll turn to Salome, since it's our data, our computer science, the new computer scientist. I wanted to understand, as we are doing different intervention, I feel like the important thing is to calibrate our efforts to the right level so that we have a right impact. So I wanted, just in 2 minutes, what are the main career challenges as ICT lady pursuing ICT career, as a female pursuing ICT career? Just 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mahadia. So this is a very difficult question, because when you say what is the challenges that a lady is facing when they pursue ICT, it's hard for me to draw only from my experience. So then I try to talk about in general what women are facing, because some are lucky that they don't face anything, while some end up facing all of it. So I think with respect to pursuing an ICT career, the first thing challenge that we have is, of course, the society perception that, you know, you get comments like, yeah, you know, you're a woman, go for something simpler. That's something a person might say coming from a good perspective, but it's really demoralizing to the girls who are wishing to be, you know, ICT experts. The second thing that is more of a challenge is when they actually get here, and maybe you get into groups and suddenly you see that people don't take you as serious as you thought of, right? You know, in group works, you end up getting the simple words. Oh, you do the formatting of the assignment. Why don't you give me the harder coding part so I can also learn like the rest of the people? And of course, another thing is not only the perception or the concept of what we call doubters, right? So there's many people who doubt women's capacity, right? I think, and this has personally happened to me, I think a long time ago when I finished my bachelor degrees, I happened to be the best student. And the first question I got from the journalist was like, hey, so walimu alikuwa kutongoza, right? But if it was a man, then they wouldn't ask such a question, you know? So that means that even if a woman achieves a lot, we still have a lot of society doubters that will start doubting that success and trying to, you know, to make up some reasons for that success to happen, while it's just a person's effort. And yeah, so I think the last part comes to the work environment, of course. So a person struggles a lot from the beginning, and we have very few women. And finally, when they come to work, I think there's statistics that shows that 35% of women in ICT abandon their ICT careers and go into something else like marketing or something. Not because they are not competent enough technically, but because the work environment is not friendly for a woman, right? People schedule meeting at, you know, midnight and forget that this person is also a mother and she has to go home, right? Just because that a person is working in ICT, the work environment should also be encouraging enough for the person to keep staying in a way that she can manage both maybe the work, but also the family perspective as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Salome. Yeah, so Salome, first, a round of applause, Salome. She was the best student in ICT. You know? Yeah, so that also says a lot that we can do it. And yeah, I've also pursued ICT career in the ICT space. I understand some of the challenges, especially of given the light task like this one. You can do the formatting, you can do that. Yeah, but we want to work equal so that everybody has a chance to learn, and at the early stage is where we want to learn. So yeah. So I will just give you like 30 seconds to give me what is one use case, because it's not enough to work into the digital inclusion space, but I wanted to understand one use case as an impact of what you have done. Just 30 seconds, and yeah, Navina, would you want to say?
So I'll draw from our experience with the research that we have done. We have done the Amplified Abuse Report, a case study of the Ugandan 2020 election. With the election, what we did is we monitored 202 social media accounts for male candidates and female candidates. Our purpose was just to learn what is the experience of women online and what is the experience of men online. General findings were 28% of women experienced online violence compared to male. So that is where we had the confidence to go ahead and speak or advocate against online violence. And with that report, we have been able, okay.
5 seconds.
Okay. With that report, we have been able to come up with the current program that we are doing in Uganda, in Tanzania, the Vote Women Project, aimed at capacitating women leaders with skills that will enable them to be digital resilient. Thank you.
Okay, so Asha, just try to use 30 seconds.
For us, it's very broad. So far, the ministry is saying that they have a coverage of, I usually like this example, they say that they have a coverage of 63%. Like 63% can be used by Tanzanians, but only 23% of it is being utilized. 40% don't utilize it. So while we're talking about digital divide, we are focusing on women, yes, but there is a problem out there. And I would say in general, we are trying to solve that one. Thank you.
In the making.
In the making.
So I would pass, I know you haven't done something in Tanzania, just 30 seconds, Dr. Hadija.
Thank you. So far, we've reached secondary school age children, about almost 700 secondary school age girls who are capable of identifying challenges and developing ICT solutions for these challenges.
Okay, a round of applause, 700 secondary school. I can see a brighter future. I'll just welcome Salome for a 5 minutes presentation. Salome is just going to show us what is like if we don't include more women into the data space and into the digital space as well. Salome, karibu.
Okay, thank you very much. I think my dear stressed a lot on the 5 minutes, so I tried to take just that. So I don't think I have a clicker, so. Okay, so we can move to the first slide. So the idea of this presentation is just to show you that, okay, so what is the impact of not having enough women in the technology space? So what kind of products do we have in the end? And I like to start this presentation with this seatbelt example. Even though it's not ICT related, it makes it easier for us to understand. So statistics show that 47% of women are more likely to be seriously injured and 17% more likely to die than men if we have a similar car accident. So if me and maybe my husband get in a similar car accident, I have 47% more chance to be injured and 17% more chance to die, right? And you might wonder why. Next slide. So the idea is whenever they do seatbelt testing, they always use dummies like that, which are in form of a male body, right? Which means even though the seatbelt is proven to be safe, no one knows if it's actually as safe for women because we don't use any dummies that are representing the women. So as you can see there is no boobs, right? Nobody's pregnant there. Everyone is, you know, just very male in the figure. So this is a very shocking example because they discovered this maybe 40 years ago, but the companies only started to do this test with female bodies only 10 years ago. So there's like 30 years where everybody knew, but nobody did anything about it, right? And then this also means that at this point, only a few car companies are doing a test with the female body, and with the pregnant body, I think there's only one Swedish company which is doing the test. So you can see that even though we feel like maybe we're not ignoring these people, but we are creating products that in the end might actually affect our women. Next. So a little bit more tech-related example, right? This is an example of a health application. This, can you move a bit so there's more content? And more? Yes. So there was two people who used a health app to try to diagnose what the problem they have. And they gave the same symptoms, 59-year-old smoker with chest pain in the center of the chest. And here the diagnosis was that you're either depressed or you're having a panic attack. And the same person, same symptoms, and the diagnosis was a heart attack. Now, if you can see in this case, the first one was a female and the second one was a male. So this kind of implications, like if it's a possible heart attack and you don't recommend it just because you don't have enough data on women, then maybe this person doesn't take the right precautions. So I think if you're having a panic attack, the recommendation is you need to lay down and rest. But if you're having a heart attack, you should really run to the hospital, right? So this, is, you can see, it's a mismatch there. Next, again. Yes, and I think one more. So we have, this is an example of AI biasness in applications. So we use a lot of AI to train algorithms to predict something, right? So even if we give it as text or images or videos that are not gender biased, the AI algorithm itself can be biased because maybe the data is not balanced, right? So maybe every time we write a doctor, it's followed by a he, and then the AI algorithm thinks that, okay, in men's world, a doctor is a he, and every time it's a nurse, then it's a female. So while this biasness is not intentional, it is introduced by the biasness in the data that we have and we collect. So this means whenever we create our application and we're relying on decisions to be made on certain data, we need to be aware of how gender balanced this data is. Next. Maybe we can skip this one because my dear is standing now. But the idea is that this is a study that shows that with VR headsets, virtual reality, that if I put on the same at a man, then I will get more dizzy compared to the man just because they didn't consider the distance between the eyes, which is difference between men and women. Next. And similar we have for voice applications where you find that a lot of training is done on male voices, which means that if I use my voice, maybe the app doesn't recognize my voice as well. Next. Yes, so I have like a lot of examples like this, but the point I want to get at is if we are underrepresented, and this goes for any group, it goes for women, it goes for disabled people, it goes for old people. If you're underrepresented in a place where they're actually collecting the requirements, even the products that you create, the services, the policy, will also end up being biased, right? Next. Last slide, yes. So this is a conclusion I always like to make. So it's a quote that says, if people think alike, no matter how smart they are, they will likely be stuck at the same locally optimal solution. So if you innovate, you need to really have diverse group of people. So if you're creating application, remember to include women, remember to think about disabled people and old people and like that. Thank you very much.
Nailed it on the importance of including more women into the digital space, because otherwise it's not only that we'll be creating a biased solutions, but we are also losing money because those solutions are not going to be applicable in most spaces. So it matters financially, socially, and economically to include more women into the digital space. I know Halila is standing. And though I just wanted to give 5 seconds for my call to action. Now we have seen the gap and we have seen that we need to act now. But what is that one call to action do you want to make? I'll start with Dr. Hadija.
Thank you very much. In my first second, I'll ask you to simply search on your, if you have a mobile phone, just search telecommunications engineer and then go to images. Just do a simple Google search. And while you're doing that, I'll go first to my points. I think it's important to take gender mainstreaming very seriously. Whatever project you're doing, you'll find that you're being asked to include gender mainstreaming somehow. Do gender auditing. Do monitoring, collect gender aggregated data, disaggregated data or whatever. But this is usually lip singing. We don't do that diligently. I think it's high time we did that because it's important to get or to gather data intelligently. It's not enough to say that in Tanzania we have 28 million active internet users without knowing out of those 28 million, how many are ladies, how many are guys, and why are the ladies in so much percentage and not more or not less, and so on and so forth. But something else, I think we really need to break this, to break the stereotypes, just two more. To break the stereotypes,
one more.
To break the stereotypes It's not, like I was saying, just search. If you search for telecoms engineer, you'll find most of the photos will show you males, not females. If you search for a hairstylist on Google, you'll see all females. So not every, I think Salome told a very good story there. And the very last thing is we need to promote female role models. You see that at least in our culture, females are supposed to stay quiet and reserved all the time. But participating in the digital economy needs your online presence. You have to be there in public to be seen. And that's against our culture, and it's undermining our efforts to be there. Thank you.
Thank you. So the rest, one key point.
Okay, so modernizing education system alone will not ensure that girls can flourish in changing labor markets. So what we need is to pay attention on the systematic disadvantages and discriminations that are revolving around women and girls when they want to get into this competitive world. And another thing, if I could add, is that the world is missing around US $30 million into the global economy because girls are not completing their education. So investing responsibly in the education sector and to be more gender focused and not biased will make us have a strong economy globally and even for our country. Thank you.
Asha?
So the data Tamasha was called out online. I don't believe there was a banner offline. I'm not so sure. I saw it entirely online. Don't underestimate the level of digital literacy you have. I think it is time, as individuals who are good at digital literacy, in whatever level we are, we should have this conversation even at home. Sometimes a victim might be somebody in your home. They might be psychologically and mentally affected in a way which you who is here can help. And secondly, collaboration. My call to action is that we do a lot of work to enhance women participation online. If you could kindly follow our pages on Women at Web, anybody who's ready to collaborate to bring more women online, we are happy to.
Thank you, Asha.
Okay, I've heard everyone speaking about data and digital platforms, digital inclusion. My call is, we are all saying that there's still underrepresentation of women, but these women won't come to the use of digital platforms if the internet is not safe. So I'm calling upon everyone, make the internet safe, stop posting negative or harsh comments for any woman online, because with the recent research that we have published, done in 5 countries, Senegal, Ethiopia, South Africa, Kenya, and Uganda, we realized that 12.2% of women totally leaves the internet due to harsh comments. Stop making that, otherwise we'll keep speaking about the issue of less number of women to the digital platforms because of that. So make the internet safe for every woman using it. Thank you.
We need a safe digital space. Salome, 30 seconds.
Yes, so my 30 seconds is gender is both male and female and others these days. So since this is data Tamasha, whenever we collect data or whenever we use data, we should make sure that we have gender aggregated data. So if for a product you find that 50% of people like this feature, then you can implement it. But you can even go further in your analysis and say there were only 10 women who commented on this and they all don't like feature X. This means you can always make decisions if you have gender disaggregated data. So please collect gender disaggregated data.
Thank you. And globally, we only have 30% of gender disaggregated data. So clearly there is something to be done. I just wanted to make a last remark just to cement on why it matters to include more women. A study by McKinsey says that companies with top quartile for gender diversity are likely to generate 50% to exceed financial national medians. And also successful startups have twice women senior as unsuccessful startups. So gender inclusion matters. Thank you.
Thank you to all our panelists. May I please ask you to take your seat? Another round of applause, Yamani. A lot of incredible points raised. I'll just nail down one. If we are underrepresented in the research and data collection, then even the products and solutions would be skewed in the representation. The digital world is not gender biased. We make it gender biased. Yamani, for the next session, we have an incredible conversation around financial inclusion in the digital economy, unboxing data for financial inclusion in the digital economy. And this will be led by none other than Elvis Mushi from FSDT. But kabla hajapanda stejini, ningependa mjiweke tayari kumpigia yeye pamoja na panelists wake makofi. Financial inclusion, digital inclusion, access to finance ni topic kubwa sana ambayo ni pila kuhakikisha kwamba haya yote tunayozungumzia yanaweza yakatiki. So tumpe sikio letu. If you have any questions, I just want to insist, please post them on YouTube because tunakimbizana na muda. Make sure you post them on YouTube. We will find them and we will share them with the moderator. A hand of applause for Mr. Elvis Mushi, FSDT.
Asante sana Halila. In the meantime and in the interest of time, generally I'd like to kindly ask the panelists to come up front. Andrew Tesha from A-Trader, Mike Shaka from Nilipe, Edie John from Safari Wallet, Roslyn Moria from Vodacom, and specifically in this session representing M-Pesa. And then we have Timiebi Itanisa from the from NMB, National Microfinance Bank. I don't know if the word still stands like that. Karibuni, you can freely take a seat. I think we are all here now. And I would not like us to take so much time. As we kick off this panel discussion, I frequently like to start the conversation from separating two critical words in this conversation: digital and economy. In most cases with these conversations, what you tend to hear is people discussing the digital elements and where we have reached with most of that. But we forget what needs to be done in the real economy, in the things that people are doing on a day-to-day basis. So the two words combined bring something that maybe over-elevates the word digital, and I think there's an element of creating the balance between the two. Ni namna ambavyo mifumo ya kidijitali inaenda kusaidia uendeshaji wa shughuli mbalimbali za binadamu kadri siku zinavyozidi kusonga. Kwa hivyo nadhani kwa mapana yake tuliangalie kwa namna hiyo. As much as the technology, which I think most of you are experts on, will be easy to resolve, the second part becomes an interesting part. How do you now take that technology into highly informal systems? Just to give you a few statistics, 60% of Tanzania's GDP is informal. And when you ask the central bank, they tell you 6 out of 10 shillings do not sit in formal system. They're not in M-Pesa, they're not in the banking system. They're neither in all those places. So, hela nyingi ziko kwenye magodoro huko chini. But lakini at the same time, I want to give a huge, we need to really recognize the financial sector as a frontier in the digital economy. And kudos to the likes of M-Pesa and NMB that have gone out there, and all the good telcos here, I mean fintechs where we have Nilipe, and you'll hear more from them, that have really unpacked the way in which we can drive digital technologies into our day-to-day activities. Tutawasikiliza zaidi tunavyozidi kusonga hapa, kuwaelewa zaidi, lakini madini mazuri yanayotokana na digital economy sasa ni data zenyewe sasa. Huko nako, kwa sababu hawa wenzetu kidogo wamekwenda mbali ukiangalia. Sio sana, lakini wamekwenda mbali ukilinganisha na sekta zingine. Tunaweza tukajifunza nini ili kuhakikisha kwamba tunaweza tukapata mabadiliko makubwa tunayotafuta kwenye nchi yetu. So I know we have a lot of questions, but our conversation will be split into maybe 4 critical pieces. They will give us a little bit about the experience. We'll talk about taxation and the digital economy. We'll talk about data utilization, the mammoth amounts of data that are being generated. Then we'll go to like future frontiers and things that we need to prioritize to truly unlock both the digital economy and the utilization of the data being generated from the digital economy. Alafu tutafunga. Kwa hivyo nitajitahidi kadri niwezavyo niwa involve kwenye haya mazungumzo. Kwa hivyo I will start from the far end And my question here, when we start off from the experience bit, is to ask each of the panelists to give us a little bit about what they do and how that is connected to the digital economy. And then quickly, what are the main drivers they see in achieving this digital economy? Now, what are the challenges that are also there, and how could we resolve for those? You have at least 2 minutes for that lengthy question. So it's a 3-in-1. You can nitpick, and if you can focus on a few points, that would be better. We'll start off with Mike Shaka from Nilipe. I think most of you go out to events, and there's some magic that happens at the entrance for those of us who have a little bit of a nightlife. So that's where I've interacted with Nilipe. But Mike, you can tell us a lot more about Nilipe. Karibu-san.
Thank you very much, Elvis. Nilipe, maybe you have heard of it or come across it. It's a mobile application from Android and iOS. It's an application that we thought of as a way to include those people who usually have a lifestyle in entertainment and also engage in doing transactions without the need of actually facing a mobile application that is lean to the financial services. So if you open Nilipe today, you would see there is an interactive UI that gives you the privilege not only to do a transaction, but also engage with your colleagues. So we have sprinkled a social element on Nilipe, and that makes it look like more of an entertainment application. So we've kicked off with one vertical first, and that was the entertainment where we sell tickets. So we will tell you of an event that is happening within your surroundings, but at the same time, we'll tell you who's going there. For those who have bought a ticket and they are on your contact list, with that information, we'll tell you, predict and plan how to go for that event. And with the financial inclusion that we wanted to put on this application is that most of the time you'd see cash points. If you're going to a marathon, you'd have to go all the way to Masaki to register, or MCT to register, where you pay your physical cash. We've seen the websites, we've seen people trying to digitalize this, but we came with around with it. Not a website where you go and leave, but this application lets you to retain your data. And with this information, when you come back again, you don't need to sign up or register or do anything of that sort. So for those who have purchased a ticket on either marathon or entertainment event like a concert or maybe a financial talk at Hayat, you notice that the second time you're doing the transaction is so swift, you don't need to sign up again. And this is the reason why we opted for the route of having an app. We faced a lot of challenges from the beginning, and I would say this, that in a developing country like Tanzania, financial inclusion is a challenge, and the cash element. Now, the cash element is easy for most of the people without realizing that it's actually expensive to maintain cash. And to convert that was a big challenge for us, especially that we were introducing an application whereby somebody has to download it first, keep it on your app, the space and everything. Now that challenge, we only overcome it by introducing incentives that move people from actually using cash to using the application. So one of the key incentives and one of the objectives that we placed on our marketing strategy was the prices. So if you go to an event and you want to buy a ticket, at the door, it would be the difference of 10,000 would spike a lot. Somebody who wants to buy 5 tickets. Mm-hmm. Now, at the end of the day, we automatically converted from one person, where we started with events at Magomeni and Mbagala, where we're doing boxing events. We started converting from one person to 40,000 people today, and that movement only happened because there was an incentive for you to move. Mm-hmm. Now the build-up process kept on coming when we introduced other features like notifications allowing you to get involved with the events. So to answer in general your question, I would say there was a challenge, yes, but the financial inclusion for the mobile application is also a big challenge when it comes to doing cash transactions. Thank you.
Asante sana, Mike. I like this conversation that you now slowly start seeing, this interaction between the real world and the technology that we have and what gets to drive the adoption, which is interesting in this case. If we will move everyone to e-commerce or into this digital space, it ought to be cheaper than cash. And how do we then get to that place? Without further ado, I would just want to then move to Roslyn and ask her to give us the experience from an M-Pesa side, how the challenges they're facing, and what are the ideas that Vodacom has that could help us truly unlock this highly informal economy and utilize systems and services like yours to drive this digital economy. Karibu-san.
Thank you very much, Elvis. I think I would like to connect, and I'll come to Mike in a little bit, but I'd like to connect this session to the previous session and talk a little bit, just 2 seconds, about gender, because it's a subject that is also close to our hearts at Vodacom. And just to throw a quick stat out there, that this is something that, as a purpose-led organization, Vodacom has really looked at inclusion, especially female inclusion as well. And today, about 48% of our executive management is represented by females. And across the organization, we're close to 50-50, achieving the 50-50 parity. So we are a good employer from that perspective. We value women and their inputs, and women innovate for women, and it's something that we do not pay lip service to. We actually believe in that. So just wanted to throw that out there. With regards to your question, Elvis, I think I'd want to first address what is digital inclusion and how do we see it at Vodacom, and financial inclusion for that matter. And for us, it's really digitizing payments. As we've heard from Mike, you know, these digital platforms, financial inclusion platforms, they're really competing against cash. And we're not competing against one another, each other. It's really cash. And cash is expensive. Today, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe only less than 5% of our payments are digitized. So the opportunity is vast to innovate. We are many innovators in the room to innovate in this space so we can truly, truly digitize payments in Tanzania. When you speak of a digital economy, a big component of it is digital payments. Now, if digital payments is not a space that we are actively transforming, it means this big element of it is lacking in the whole transformation of Tanzania's economy into a digital economy. We heard earlier this morning when we were listening to the representative from Minister of Finance, Dr. Marato, he touched on this as well, that digitizing payments is a big component of that. And what has Vodacom done in this space, and how do we see it playing out? In 2008, of course, as you all know too well, is when we introduced M-Pesa, and we were pioneers in this space. Like I said, it's a vast space. Anyone and everyone should play in it. And at that time, only, I believe, 15% of the Tanzanian population was included financially. So the financial inclusion index was sitting at 15%. 10 years later, we are talking about 65%. This is a stat by the FinScope, latest FinScope numbers, 65%. So you see how transforming digital payments and including people financially has been able to be achieved by using digitization. And with that comes a big responsibility for us to make sure that the investment that has gone into realizing that kind of milestone for Tanzania is actually protected through policies and having a collaborative discussion again. I'll go quickly back to what I introduced earlier as what is a digital economy. And this is digitizing economic sectors of the economy, which touches on agriculture, it touches on education, it touches on things like transportation. These are all economic segments, health. And Vodacom truly, truly sees itself as a communications company and not a telco. It's a communications company, which means we are also migrating with the world, especially within the 4IR context. We're moving from being from providing connectivity where you're able to transact maybe P2P, person to person, on your M-Pesa, for example, or on GSM where you're just able to make a call, to actually innovating in spaces that have an effect in transforming your life experiences. And here we're greatly guided by the inclusion pillar of our purpose. Inclusion for all, digital society, and environments. These are pillars of our purpose-driven organization. And you already see that us positioning ourselves as what did I say? Not communications, but a technology company really goes to transform these sections. And we have use cases that go to actually derive and deliver this point home. But I'd like to throw a quick statistics here that perhaps might help us wrap our heads around how, or rather what the barriers are in digitizing this economy. If today you look at how much of the network infrastructure that is out there in Tanzania, how much of it is actually digital or 3G, 4G, we are talking about 46% of the population is today covered by this network that is enabling us in the room to make fancy innovations, whether it's through an app or other innovations. 46% of our population is covered by 3G or a data network in general. But here is an interesting stat, that only less than 38% of that network is utilized by our people. What does that mean? That means 62% of the people that are today covered by a 3G, 4G network are not using that network, right? So that is investment sitting idle. But it is also an opportunity for us to start addressing what are the contributing factors that are taking au ambazo zinapelekea yule mtu ambaye amefikiwa na mtandao wa data kutoutumia. Ni vitu gani vinamfanya yule mtu asitumie ule mtandao? Kuna issues nyingi, including affordability, which is bringing us right back to financial inclusion. When we make financial services, fintech services, expensive, when we make them inaffordable, it means ile 62% inaenda ikiongezeka. Na kama ikienda ikiongezeka, inamaanisha we're just chasing our own tails and running around in circles. So one of the biggest discussions that we really like to engage in as Protocom is how do we bring together all players that have a part to play in addressing this issue across the verticals and not one vertical at a time. Affordability is a big issue. When you look at the TOZO that was recently introduced, that goes to make this service of M-Pesa, for example, a lot more inaffordable, further widening that digital divide when it comes to financial services. I want to leave it at that. I want to leave it there for now in the interest of time.
And we'll go into the taxes just after this. Quickly, we go to NMB and get the experience and the challenges around enabling a digital economy, which is which then leads us to mammoth amounts of data that could deliver more value for our people. Karibu sana Timiebi.
Yes, Timiebi. Good afternoon to everyone. I hope you guys can hear me. So I'll go straight into the challenges that the bank faces. Now, as with an experience,
can you hear him well?
Can you guys hear me? All right. Okay. Perfect. So I'll go straight to the challenges that the bank faces into making a digital economy and financial inclusion a reality. So working in a highly regulated industry, the main challenge that we face is the regulators and the policymakers lagging behind the innovation that we come up with. And I think this is something that needs to be addressed by the policymakers or the regulators. The speed that the technology is moving with, as well as the digital innovation that is moving at a breakneck speed, and the regulators are not able to cope with that. So maybe something needs to be changed, but at the same time taking into account the necessary risk that comes with that. So in terms of challenges, I think that's it, yeah.
Thank you so much. Quick introductions to Safari Wallet, and then maybe quickly jump into the challenges and your recommendations there in the interest of time so that we can unpack this conversation deeper. Hello?
Hi, my name is Idi John. I'm one of the members of Safari Wallet. So basically, why we started Safari Wallet was more of looking into two things or solving two big problems. The first one is changing a notion of travel for Africans, whereby most of us we know for over 40 years since tourism started in Tanzania and Africa, tour operators were only focusing on promoting tourism to international tourists. A good example could be a case of crisis like COVID-19, which showed up last year and shut down everything. So one thing you could actually learn from that particular kind of impact is that Tanzania, as much as we speak about having over 2 million international arrivals every year since, probably 5 years ago, we also don't own the cash of tourism because we only receive service money from the biggest platforms outside Tanzania and Africa. And, as much as we speak, let's say, for example, tourism probably contribute about $2 billion every year, but basically that's actually service money. Meanwhile, over 80% of the money that we're supposed to have as a country, it stays outside to other countries. That's one of the biggest challenges. The second thing is that, on the same purpose, thinking about those who only earn a large amount of money, I'm talking about operators, and the chain includes everyone else from local guides, those who play a role of whether cleaners in hotels and everybody. Most of them are actually not included in part of these earnings. So the biggest thing is this. We thought, how about we change the behavior of travel and contribute to Africans to travel within their own destination, meaning that promoting Africa inter-regional tourism. But in the same time, there's the biggest challenge to Africans. When it comes to finance, we do not save towards something. We spend when we have money. So if you give me $25,000 today, that's the right time I'll think about a car, a house, and probably, engage my girlfriend. Now, that's where we fail. So since we don't have a culture of planning, our platform gives a power of travel to local, whereby you can probably think of any holiday you want to do in 24 months before you plan it or buy it. And then you subscribe to a single package and start paying slowly by installments. But not only that, in the future, we're also thinking of launching a PAT service whereby you can buy a holiday and pay after travels. So thinking about one thing, as much as we want to expose you to many places, we also want to help you to accommodate your finances so you can afford any experience without feeling the pain of spending a lot of money at once, which is actually the only culture that most of people know. So if you right now you want to book a holiday for this Christmas, for example, you might not afford it because you're already late. So if you would have planned to start, booking it early in January, you could have been there or thinking of being there at this particular time. This is exactly what other countries are doing. Most of the time when we see visitors coming to our country, we think they just bought last minute. No, they've planned for over 2 years or 3 years. So I think when it comes to economical and digital inclusion, meaning that if we have a power to decide and to make people buy as early as much as possible, that could actually help not only people thinking I cannot afford to buy a certain kind of experience, but also that could actually help people to earn. It doesn't matter who is actually hosting or posting within the tourism sector.
Tanzanians, are we booking those trips now on Safari Wallet?
I'd say yes, we had a little bit of struggles within the technology side of it, but the data and indication shows that people behavior have actually changed from the past 5 years. And
what are the challenges then that you're facing in people saving for that likizo?
I mean, the biggest challenge that, let's say, we've seen so far, especially when we're doing some of the works manually, was number one is most of locals, they've never traveled. Some they've actually traveled. So believing, hey, if I send 50,000 every week, would you guys take me to holiday for real? I mean, what if this company disappears in the next 6 months? So there's the issue of trust when it comes to the social proof of what you're doing, and I think that's one of the biggest things. Unless you have a lot of finance support at the back that gives you a power to do all kind of marketing, not only that, give an assurance. And I think for us, in order to solve that, we've done different types of partnership that gives customers a proof that we can actually, they can actually travel with us.
Can you give us an example, maybe, as we now slowly move to Andrew? Do you have an example of how then you've been able to boost trust?
So, for example, let me give you a good example. Right now, if you buy, let's say, a certain single holiday that, let's say, costs you 150,000, and you could actually be 9 people in that particular package, we also include insurance, making sure in case of emergency on your travels, we can actually cover up to $50,000 cost of damage of anything that will happen within the tourism during your travels.
Nashukuru sana. I'd like to invite you, Andrew, for the next part of this discussion. Similar questions. Give us a little bit about A-Trader and the challenges you face and what could be done. Karibu.
Thank you. Nothing? You guys in? Yeah. It's good? Yes, all right. Because Edie said almost everything that I was going to say, but it's okay. All right, so A-Trader, my name is Andrew Tesha. I am one of the co-founders of A-Trader. Who does betting? Betting? Sio dhambi jamani. Betting, great. Why do you do betting? Who? Why? Kwa nini? For income, right? To make some extra money, right? So the first thing we did when we were starting A-Trader is we knew why we were doing it. We were doing it so that people could actually get extra income. This is a big financial inclusion challenge across Africa, right? People have money, people have some forms of income, a lot of people have savings, but what are they doing with these savings? What are they doing with that income? So a lot of youth today are putting their income into betting and hoping to get a quick return. And one of the first things that we realized is we had to understand the rationale behind our reasons for starting the company. We were lucky enough, we got into a program which was sponsored by FSDT, and they actually taught us the value of data. So the number one thing is, who are you building this for? We had to figure that out. And that data is very, very difficult to find, right? You're trying to start an app or a business, watakuanzisha kitu chochote sasa hivi, takwimu unazitoa wapi? Ni challenge kubwa sana, si ndio? Yeah? So what we had to do is we had to go very, very deep, look into behavioral patterns, look into what is happening in the society, look at what people are actually spending their money on right now. We had a lot of help from FinSights, the FinScope surveys. Most of our data actually came from there. But then we started to understand the landscape. Who are we building this for? How can we start to build this? And that's when data became our primary tool in order to actually build the platform, right? So whatever you're doing, data, I believe, from day one, it should be part of the process, okay? You have to understand who is your customer, why are they your customer, what problems, challenges are they facing, how many people are there like that? Then we needed to figure out the market. Is there a market for what we're doing? Okay, so A-Trader is basically helping people to invest. We're helping people to take whatever extra income that they have, put that income aside in safe investments, secured investments, in regulated investments, all right? And the idea is we're not gonna make you rich overnight. I think any investment which makes you rich overnight, you have to really look very deep into that. But what we will do is we will help you grow whatever income and whatever savings you have for the future, whether it's for education, whether it's for medical bills, whether it's for an emergency later on. You have kids, you want to plan for their college or secondary school, whatever it is. And we need these tools in Africa, we need these tools in Tanzania, okay? So now, understanding the market.
You could go to the challenges now,
Yeah,
and what we could potentially do then.
Great. So understanding the market, I think the biggest challenge, first and foremost, is mindset. Okay? So we have, in terms of digital payments, it's almost $7 trillion statistics worldwide, right? We had in Africa in 2019, I think over $60 billion worth of transactions, capital markets. There's a lot of money circulating. Why isn't Tanzania getting some of that pie? So I think we need a mindset change from the regulator. We need a mindset change in terms of how are we creating the right system, the right platforms. And then the final thing is we need to be executing. So a big part of the challenge, I think, is we talk a lot. Tunaongea sana kuhusu hivi vitu, lakini what's the end product, right? So as entrepreneurs, I think execution is maybe on us as much as anyone else, but we need to be executing and actually bringing these products into the market.
Asante sana, Andrew, and thank you, panelists, for starting this up. What is slowly emerging here, and that's what we wanted to bring in this panel, is this experience of understanding that the tools can sit there, but the value sits with the nature of solutions we build on top of them, and then the data will be born off that. That's why you would look at Nilipe and think Nilipe is a payment system, but it's a cheaper way of getting your seat or your booking into an amazing event. The value is not maybe even in the payment by itself. The loss you make from the transaction cost is compensated by the gain you make from your discount. That means Nilipe is integrated to M-Pesa and hopefully will get integrated to NMB, because at the end, then the money, when I look at Safari Wallet, the money that is collected by Safari Wallet on a piecemeal has to have an account that sits within a bank. And then you kind of realize this flavor that sits there, but the nature of solutions that need to start emerging at the higher level to allow for the digital adoption. It has to be kwamba tiketi yangu ni ya bei zaidi, nikienda nilipe, so that then I could opt for that than me going with my cash at the event. And I think those are kind of the spaces we have to start thinking of, truly first unlocking the digital economy by itself before then leveraging on the data that comes from that. I will quickly then move into quick questions for Roslyn and Timiebi. Forgive me, I struggled there a bit. And I just want us to go into the taxing question a little bit. Back in 2013, there was a tax that was introduced and withdrawn shortly after. It was called SIM card tax. It was 1,000 shillings, I think, per SIM card per month. I might be wrong on those stats. But then we noticed in 2016, there was a tax that was introduced. It was called excise duty. It was on financial services. It kind of cut across insurance, all financial services in general, and it was at 10%. And recently, we had the government levy come in. I've had long conversations with Roslyn and a couple of the players, and the shortcomings of being the frontier of unlocking the digital economy means you are the ones who are bringing visibility to the transactions, to the day-to-day activities that for a long time we've struggled with taxing. So you're a good place to jump to if I'm thinking quickly of how I could mobilize money. I like bringing that balance to this conversation. My quick question here, Roslyn, how should we approach this? Because it means 2013 we kind of came there knocking with your voice and data heart. 2016 we came, and 2021 we are here. Maybe 2022 we will come again. And
God forbid.
Tufanyeje?
Thank you very much. That's a beautiful question, Elvis. And you did allude to some previous attempts on taxation and policy, which some were good, but some were not so good. We are here because there has been very good policies enacted by our government, and hence we have seen innovation thriving. We have seen financial inclusion jump from what it was to what it is today. So there are things that are happening which are enabling us to thrive. But can we do more? I mean, I now here speak on behalf of TAMNOA, which is the Association of Mobile Network Operators, because when it comes to issues of policy, we actually have a unanimous voice on what we advocate for. And I'll be very specific on the issues of taxation. The number one thing is that we're saying taxation should avoid regressive impact, right? And it shouldn't undermine affordability and accessibility, okay? We have, in the space of financial inclusion, a very good framework that was activated by the government that says we need affordable services so that we can actually bridge that digital divide. Now, when we enact taxes that are going to touch on this affordability factor negatively, it means we are actually regressing. And as a matter of fact, since the implementation of the Mobile Financial Services tax, commonly known as TOZO, we have seen this impact, right? We've seen quite a few of our accounts, mobile active accounts, drop off from that whole ecosystem, which means those who were previously financially included are today out of scope, and they are invisible. We have the latest stats of TCRA show 33.2 million accounts out of a population of almost 60. So there you have it, that you have that many accounts that are active on mobile financial services. And here I'm speaking about M-Pesa, Tigo Pesa, and all the others. And from there's also employment of wakalas. 770,000 is the number that we heard the governor of Tanzania speak of just the other week during the coffee meeting in Dodoma. So all these people, because of regressive taxation, are now at a loss, right, to a certain degree. We will publish reports that show to what extent. But today we already know that the volumes have dropped as a result of this, which brings me to my second point, that taxation should consider sector and product externalities. As you said, rightfully, Elvis, just here across the stage, there are so many interdependencies, from an app developer to a company like myself here, Protocom, Tigo, whoever else, that provides the platform where innovation can be possible, to NMB that maybe hosts some of that trust account money that sits with them, that earns interest, which is then coming back to users, you know, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of interdependencies, and this is at a user level, right? But there's also interdependencies in the economic sectors, in agriculture, in transport. So when you think of taxation, it also has to consider those externalities and what would be the ripple effect. And we advocate for long-term views to be taken on fiscal policy, and not just to mitigate budget deficits for the short term. So I'll move quickly. The next is that taxation should not discourage investments. And especially if we're saying a digital economy, you know, when we talk about financial payments, such as what you find with the likes of digital money, this is the backbone of payments in a digital economy. It's long-term investments, and there needs to be certainty around the return on investment on that is going to be laid down to enable this backbone of payments in a digital economy that you find in the form of M-Pesa, for example. Now, policies and taxes must consider how that investment is going to be encouraged and not discouraged. If you look at who plays the biggest role in this section, and we even spoke about it earlier, everyone has a role to play. Government has its role, private sector has its role. We heard the startups talking about how they need investment by the private sector, but government needs to put in place policies or even put their own investment so they can buy that confidence. In this section, it's the private sector who has invested heavily. It's not the public sector. Yes, they have invested, but over the years we have seen actually it's the private. Now, how do we protect the private investment so that it can continue being the foundation of all these things that we're talking about? Okay? And the last but not least is that taxation should be broad-based. And you shouldn't just, we're advocating for it to be broad-based and not just mobile specific. So if we're saying less than 5% moves digitally and the rest is outside, this cash-based economy, then if you're going to tax mobile financial services, then also tax cash. Because if you don't do that, it means people will default from, rather defer to cash and move away from digital.
Asante sana, Rosalind. Timiebi, do you want to add something there on what Rosaline had said around taxation and financial services in general before we move to data utilization? And I'm looking at the fintechs on the table. Does one want to comment on taxation? Okay, Timiebi, and then we'll move to data utilization. In the meantime, I'm going to get 3 questions on the digital economy generally and taxation before we move to data utilization. And I know we're running short of time. So get ready, become so sharp with the nature of question that you ask. Karibu.
Yes, so the issue of taxation actually has set us years back in terms of financial inclusion. And the funny thing is, when policymakers looked at financial inclusion, they actually turned into the digital innovators for solution. But then the policymakers are not creating a conducive environment for digital innovators to actually make more affordable solutions. So I think it's something that the policymakers need to look really close at, because then it's setting us back years back from where we were in terms of financial inclusion. Yeah.
Asante sana. If you have any questions on how to unlock the digital economy before we go into the next part of our conversation on how we can utilize the mammoth amounts of data being driven here, could you raise your hand? If there is none, then I will quickly jump into a conversation on, now that we have all these amazing platforms. We have data from AirTrader, we have data from Safari Wallet, we have NMB generating mammoth amounts of data from the transactions that we run. M-Pesa more or less the same, looking at our voice and data behavior, but also our financial payments behavior and a critical enabler through payments. And you have Nilipe giving us cheaper entertainment moments. All this yields to a lot of data. I'll give you a few statistics here. 90% of the data generated in the world today was generated in the last 2 years, just to know where we are getting ourselves to. At the same time, only 0.5 of that mammoth amount of data has been analyzed. And literally with most businesses, around 70% of the data is unused. Of all the markets, the frontier markets, if you want to think of Europe, businesses in Europe are, almost 4% of businesses in Europe are the ones that could say have positioned themselves as data or analytically competitive. So I'll ask the panelists, now that they have led us into this space, quick question. Are you utilizing your data? And you can talk from an industry perspective, not your own organization. And what more should we do to truly unlock the potentials that sits with the mammoth amounts of data that you generate in general? So I will ask to start from the far end once again. Mike Shaka, Karibu.
Thank you very much, Elvis. Data in the financial space is quite broad, I should be honest. And I feel like here in a developing country, we haven't actually started looking at that angle. You know, we hear of products that come from the credit scores for the transactions you're doing, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. Now, I feel like in Tanzania and a broader spectrum, we're still evolving. We're still understanding and adapting to the financial digital solutions that we have in place. We've had that. We all know how it came about. M-Pesa was there. Everybody was skeptical about it. It took some time before people could jump into M-Pesa. And the same goes for Safari Wallet. The same goes for us. It takes a lot of time for people to actually move from the cash-based economy to a digital-based economy. Now, that itself has some time. Now, that's why you see we've not actually entirely focused on how we can now start manipulating the data, because it's not curated enough at the moment. But what I can say for us, Dilipe, the amount of data we are collecting today can give us prediction on how you can behave. More of a social app rather than a financial solution. For us, We want you, Elvis, to feel like if I want to go to a marathon, we should predict which marathon you should go. We should predict which event you're probably going to buy a ticket from. That same likes goes for Vodacom, CRDB, NMB, and the likes. You know, right now, I would tell you, in other worlds, the segmentation of customers, it is so profound that if you put your card on an ATM, the products that are displayed are curated for you. And this is simply because the way it is aggregated. We hear the likes of TIPS today. TIPS is going to aggregate the flow of data. And M-Pesa, Tigo Pesa, NMB, CRDB, and even Celcom and fintechs like us, all being aggregated at one point, will have a data pool whereby anybody can tap and come up with information and predict it very well. But for now, I see everybody's is having his own cloud of data. NMB is having his cloud. I am having the data for social elements. If I give this data to Vodacom, he can do something better. And if Vodacom gives that same data to me, I can predict who can purchase a better ticket because of the prices and the cash flow that is going through there. Now, I feel like in time, let's say 4 or 5 years to come, we might have a better way to manipulate the data.
We're being told we're going to give it 4 years to unbox that data in a way or another, based on the realities of where we are, based on the circumstances and the changes needed. So I'll quickly ask my panelists to be very sharp. We're running short of time. I think we're left with like 10 minutes. So please, 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute for those. And then I'll ask a quick question on data sharing to 2 people. Karibu, Roslyn.
I'll be very quick. So I agree with Mike. I think we are in the nascent stages of data sharing. We still have a long way to go. My organization, for example, today, Vodacom uses its own data that's created by our own customers to innovate products. So you earlier heard about Songesha. There is Empower. Songesha is that product that allows you, for those that don't know, that allows you to complete a transaction, and we're able to use data, your own data, to say, okay, Mr. XYZ is actually a native of M-Pesa, and they're not going to run away tomorrow. They'll come back to, to pay this loan within a short time, and yes, we can advance you this much, right? So we're using that data to innovate and make our lives of those that we serve a little bit easier. Empower, similarly, and this is a very good example of how we're sharing data with other organizations, so in this case, the banks, and then we share the risk as well. So we give data, they take on the risk for giving that microloan to mkulima, mwanamke anayefanya biashara yake huko nje, any user for that matter. So touching on this inclusion factor. But if I may, Elvis, very quickly, that, okay, we can do this for the data that we have. But what about those people that are not included in the first place? What about those that today we're making it very expensive for them to access these services, and therefore their data is falling off the radar? So I again come back and implore all those that have a decision to make in this space to all the time be thinking about, if this is how we're going to be using data, what about those who are now today not producing data that we can use so that we can continue impacting their lives? Asante sana.
Timiebi quickly, and then Edie, and then A-Trader. In the meantime, if you have a question, please get yourself ready. I'll give room for 3 questions or comments before we get the closing remarks from the panelists, who I'll just ask one simple question. Okay.
Right, totally agree with the previous speakers in terms of the country and the organization within the country haven't really moved the needle in terms of using the data. For instance, in our organization, most of the data that we use is generated internally, and we use that maybe to just try to understand what the demands from the supply side of the financial services are, and what are the challenges around that. And then so that we can actually use that information to create solutions that are affordable, that are personalized, and that are relevant. But you can see we are not at a point where we can actually use data that is coming outside our organization, and therefore be able to actually move the needle as far as data usage is concerned.
Yeah. Edie, quickly, and then...
I think From my side, I'd say the amount of data that is actually being used with, let's say, mostly or companies, for now, probably every data is being used for marketing. People are using only, let's say, 2 elements of the data. It could be your email address and phone number, and that's the only thing everybody's using. Like, I can send you a free kind of marketing where I don't have to spend money because I have your email address. All I can do is push email. The rest is not being analyzed. I think the biggest problem here, also, I believe a solution could be on a level where government is also being involved. For example, on a case of Tozo, when Tozo came out, if government, they had their own dashboard to analyze the power, of the Tozo, I think they would have made a different decision according to that. And I think government has to be involved in this particular part of chain where policymakers, they also see the data and analyze before they make a decision, because that can also empower or make it easy for others to be included in the financial inclusion if we are going that way.
Asante sana, Idi. Andrew, quickly.
So I think one of the things that we have today, if you pick up your phone, use any social media, you'll find that you keep going. Lazima ujiondoe kwenye ile social media platform, Instagram, Twitter, whatever, because everything that keeps coming is exactly what you want to read. Everything that keeps coming is exactly what you want to see, and it keeps going. Sindio. And what this is that they're using your data picked up from all these different sources in order to bring you the best content relevant to you. So I think this is something that we need to adopt a lot more here in Tanzania. For us, for a trader, we use data primarily to understand what could be the best investments for you, right? We use data for robo-advisory, for robo-trading. So it is very, very relevant in terms of the capital market sector, and it's something that we're already doing.
Asante sana. What you're clearly noticing from this conversation, we are yet to get to that unboxing space, Bwana Chacha, and the D-Lab team and the organizers of this conference. The hurdle sits there. There is a lot of things that people ought to prioritize, but I think at the same time it's critical for intermediaries or groups to start emerging, such as ourselves at Redefine. So I said I wear 2 hats. With Redefine now, we're working with a couple of market players that sit out there, and we say, what problems are you facing and how can we utilize the data that you hold to help you solve your own problems? And this could be large corporates that are struggling with something that they can solve with their own data, but that journey, maybe initially with demonstration, will lead to more programs that could lead to capacitation for us to truly unbox this, so that we don't get into this situation where only 4% of businesses in Europe, that means maybe 1% or 0.5% of businesses in Tanzania are using the data that they generate to solve their own problems. I have exactly 5 minutes. I want to give room for you guys to comment or give questions. And at the same time, I'll ask my colleagues to tell us that one thing that could be done to unlock either the digital economy or data utilization. But maybe let's focus more on that one thing that could unlock usage of data in our own institutions or in our environment. Alafu, with that, you will have a closing line that says, Nilipe commits to this towards unboxing data in the digital economy, so that then we kind of leave with something for us. Back to you guys there. Ladies will be given a preferential treatment, just as was the case in the previous panel.
Kuna mtu ana swali, ana mchango. There's a lady. Jamani, makofi kwake. Hata kama atajitambulisha tu inatosha. Get around. Namba kupita.
Hi everyone, my name is Sophia. I am from Ifakara Health Institute. We have heard from the conversations that most people who collect their data, they actually they put them to themselves and do their own analytics. But at the same time, we could say that it's probably because most of the institutions also, they want to concentrate on their core business and not really analyzing data. Plus, we could also say that there is a problem of expertise. You said that they collect a lot of data, but in terms of analytics, very little data is analyzed. I would like to understand the perspective of the participants on the idea of starting data marketplaces, whereby people could easily access data and analyze it on their own and bring out insight that even the institutions that are collecting did not see that coming. Yeah, thank you.
Asante sana. As the panelists, as you're getting that, you could make that part of your concluding remark. On this other side, we have one more hand at the front here.
Asante kwa panelist. Nilichokiona ni kwamba sisi wote, kila mmoja ana apps yake, na collect data kwa kutumia his own way kwa madhumuni ya faida yake. When you are just analyzing your data, you find that, for example, most of them are money maker, or you are collecting payments, but you have found that the payments are being reduced kwa sababu ya introduction ya some regulations made from the government. Hivyo vitu hamkuwa mmeviweka kutoka mwanzo kuwa anything happen mutafanyaje? That is one. But the second part, information mnayoipata inategemea na objective yenu, lakini what is the feedback, or how do you share to the public as well as the government? But again, it should be publicly, sio kama mlivyokaa nayo, so that we understand that kwa kutumia hiyo systems hizo tulikuwa tuna benefit, because that is the data which will show us. But now there is a reduction of that, because even the citizens wanaweza akawasaidia kama ilikuwa inawasaidia if you give a feedback to the citizen. But if there is no any feedback to us, how do we know that kweli zilikuwa zinatusaidia lakini kumetokea tatizo hili? In one way, it will help you to boost your payment and system, and even using the transaction, compared than when you remain with it, and because yes, you developed alone, you didn't develop with the public. So that information or that data that you are collecting, and that data which makes you, because you might even be frustrated, and you might even close your business. Lakini sisi hatujui. Thank you.
Nashukuru sana. I'm gonna give one more hand, but in the interest of time, I'll look at the panelists. You have exactly 30 seconds each of you, then we will be out of here. So the question is, what is that thing that we could do to unlock data utilization? Just specify it and then give us your commitment. I'll give you, for instance, if I was gonna say redefine commits to supporting businesses and development agencies in unlocking data that they generate. That's our commitment. But your closing remarks and then your commitment. I start from the man next to me. On my left hand, Andrew. Karibu.
Thanks, Elvis. So, closing remarks, I think that we need to redefine what is financial inclusion. And why I say that it's something to challenge everybody, but just if I step outside my house and there happens to be a bank there available for me to open an account, doesn't mean I'm financially included. Okay, that bank needs to be providing me with relevant services that are relevant to me, to my family, to my livelihood. So by redefining financial inclusion, what I mean is we need to be creating culturally relevant forms of access to finance, right?
Asante.
Yeah.
Your commitment, A-Trader commits to?
As A-Trader, we already committed to the data revolution. We will be committed to bringing on board data scientists, as well as people who are skilled in AI, machine learning. Anybody out there, reach out to us. Thank you.
Karibu sana. Edie, quickly, what's that one thing that that you think is critical towards unlocking data utilization from the digital economy?
I think for me, I'd say the involvement of the government agencies.
Mm-hmm.
It's really important and
critical.
crucial.
Let's start from policy, data protection, data sharing, and then we move from there to something else. Thank you. What does Safari Wallet commit to?
For us, one thing is, I believe in 5 years from now or 10 years from now, we'll probably be the first to travel African platform that can share insight about travel financials for Africa itself.
Nashukuru sana. They'll be sharing their data. That's a commitment. In 5 years, we'll take stock and track that. Karibu sana Timiebi.
All right, shukran. So the one thing, again, I think I'll turn to the policymakers. They really need to create a conducive environment for digital innovators and local innovators to actually come up with more innovation. So that is that. And in terms of the commitment, as NMB, we have committed already in terms of using data. We've established a data management office within the organization, which is sitting under innovation. And we also have the innovation lab. So the two pieces basically sit together and sit perfectly into unlocking the digital economy.
Asante sana, and kudos to NMB for the sandbox as well that they set up towards trying to unlock again more opportunities and more innovations. Karibu sana, Rosalind.
The one thing, Elvis, is, again, I would agree with NMB and the other speakers, it's policies that protect the investments that companies have made so far in digital infrastructure. And maybe to add to that, I would say the digital economy needs to be supported by a robust end-to-end, whether it's a policy, a strategy, something that speaks to each section of the digital economy in a holistic manner. We are committed as Protocom to having this dialogue, back to what Mama has raised as a point, engaging all the different stakeholders that have a part to play in this conversation. We have a campaign that we launched earlier this year called Africa.Connected that does just that, right? So we speak to the development partners, government, private sector, everyone else that has something to say to make sure that we bridge the digital divide. Thank you.
Mike Shaka. Asante sana, Rosalind. Mike Shaka, you started and you get to finish.
Again, Elvis, appreciate a lot. What I can say is that the government did a lot of things in the payment industry. Me being part of it, we've seen how GPG, the payment, has evolved. And this happened because the government's hands were there. The enforcement, the policies were there. Nobody thought you would be paying your parking fees online. We're doing it today. That's financial inclusion steered by the government. If we want to see data being utilized today, we need the government to form the same entity that did for GPG as well. Form that entity, protect that entity, embrace that entity, and enforce it to all the financial institutions. With that, we'll see changes in data manipulation. But what I can say, Nilipe commits to give you a social element in making payments. We're giving you an application that not only necessarily does the payment, but it will give you the social element and it will make you forget that you're actually doing a payment. Thank you.
Asanteni sana, ningeomba mwapigie makofi panelists wetu. Tumefikia mwisho na asanteni sana panelists. We can now go back to you. Asante.
And a round of applause for Mr. Elvis Mushi from FSDT, our incredible moderator. Acheni uchoyo, makofi hayo ya kichoyo sana. Some of the questions he asks, wenyewe tumejifunza mengi hapa. Thank you so much for that session. Now, as we are preparing to swiftly move into the next session, Austin, kabla sijamuita mkuu wetu, mdau mkubwa kabisa, ambao atakuja kuongoza the next session, ningekuomba utupe ka warm up kidogo, dakika 2 nakupatia.
Naomba tusimame. Can we all stand up, please? Asante.
Niliambiwa yale marage ya mchana yangelaza watu.
Marage ya mchana letena ilikuwa ya nazi. Ilikuwa right.
Shughuli pevu.
Hujayakuta kesho asubuhi na chapati.
Hapo sasa.
Sasa it's a very simple exercise. Nyosha mikono juu. I want you to be as loud as I am. Ba. Okay, both hands, eh? Ba, bato, bato, bato. Ba, sasa naomba wote tushiriki. Okay? I'll put the mic on the side. To do not what I do. Okay? You do what I tell you to do. So we all know this is ba, this is bato, this is bato, bato, right? So when I say ba, we all say ba. Okay? Bato, bato, bato. All right, let's start. Ba, bato, 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 bato.
Ba, bato, bato, bato. Shughuli pevu. Thank you so much, Austin. Jamani, a hand of applause for that. Very simple but effective. Najua some of you mtawafanyia watoto wenu manyumbani. So for the next session, we have an incredible TEDx style talk. Kitu tofauti kidogo ambacho hakijawahi kufanyika data tamasha nyingine kinakuwa introduced this time around. Nadhani kama wote ni wadau wa data tamasha mtakuwa really excited kuangalia ni kitu gani ambacho kitazungumzwa hapa. And I would love to take this moment to invite Mr. Agapiti Monday from D-Lab, one of the directors, kutuelekeza and to take us through the session. Jamani, a hand of applause ya kibato bato to Mr. Agapiti Monday. Agapiti, karibu sana.
Asante sana. Habari za mchana. Habari za mchana. Labda niwaombe tu kwanza kwamba wale ambao wanafikiri kuondoka tunaomba msiondoke kwa sababu mambo ndio yanaanza. Yaani kama kulikuwa kuna kitu ambao unaona kama akiendi basi mambo ndio yanaanza. Lakini vile vile nakumbushwa kwamba tuna vitafunwa na vitu vingine pale nje. Kwa hiyo mkiondoka vitakosa watu. Lakini tatu, mgeni rasmi alianza kwa kusema data tamasha oye. Kwa hiyo naomba nikisema data tamasha oye, tunasema tamasha liendelee. Data tamasha oye.
Tamasha liendelee.
Data tamasha oye.
Tamasha liendelee.
Asanteni sana. Tuna dakika 30, tutatumia dakika 20 kwa ajili ya kitakachofanyika in terms of TED Talk presentation, na dakika 10 ningependa sana tuulize maswali mengi sana. Kuna waandishi wa habari, kuna watafiti, kuna wanazuoni hapa, kuna watu ambao wanapenda kuuliza, nao tutawapa kundi lao. Kwa hiyo tunaomba tuulize maswali mengi sana sana sana. Leo tunataka tufanye engagement. Mzungumzaji anayekuja anaitwa Ali Salim na anatuchukua kwenye he's taking us in a school of thought where he has thought about healing the healthcare, data-driven insights for the universe quality care. Ali has been with part and parcel of the innovation ecosystem for several years, but for the last 3 years, Ali ameweza cha kwanza kubenefit na grants ambazo zimetolewa na DCLI program. Aliweza kupata seed grant ya $25,000 as a first bunch, as a seed, kujaribu solution yake, ikaenda vizuri, it worked very well, akaweza tena kusucceed, kusecure funding ya between 60 and 66 US dollars, and that's 1,000. Sio kila mtu anafanya hivyo. Na rafiki zangu wametoka hapa, nimefurahi kuwaona leo, Safari Wallet, A-Trader, tumefanya nao kazi huko nyuma. Nakumbuka wakati ule A-Trader akija ofisini wakati tuko kule Costec, tulikuwa tunaonyeshana kwenye Excel, tena kwa kujificha, itafanya hivi, itafanya hivi. Sasa hivi anakaa kwenye panel kubwa, anaongea mambo makubwa, amekuwa funded na FSDT na supported. That's a big thing. Now we need really to encourage these innovators and startups to make sure that they are moving. Safari Wallet, the same thing. Alikuwa anakuja hapa, tunaongea just one-on-one, the thinking, you know, you just from the ideation part to the prototype itakuwa hivi, watu watalipa vile na vile. And then all of a sudden, sasa hivi, he has customers. The same thing with Ali. Ali, the thinking when they started, Inspire Ideas, he was doubting and we were doubting. And imagine the two doubts zikikutana katikati. How does it work, you know? Kila mtu ana wasiwasi, lakini we say, let's take the risk. We took the risk. They went to Meru or Arumeru district. They did their work. Very good team, very committed. They have the zeal, the motivation, the everything. I can introduce him like a boxer. I don't want to introduce him like a boxer. I just want to say, Ali Salim, karibu.
Asante sana. Hello? Testing. Louder. Yeah, I don't know. It's good? Asante sana, Agapiti. I have to say, one people that stresses me the most in my life is Agapiti. And the two me in my life are D-Lab. And they don't stress me kwa sababu kila nikiwaona wananidai au nawadai, it's because they remind me of all of the things that I have yet to accomplish, or that we have yet to accomplish, because they see our team. Also in the front row is Megan Allen, the superstar research manager from our company. When they look at us, they see us for what we haven't done yet, not what we have done. And I really appreciate that, the stress. When I get an email from these guys, I start asking, what is it that I haven't done? Is it the financials? Is it the deployment? What has happened? But yeah, so my name is Ali Salim, and it's hidden back there. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our journey in healthcare. Safari yetu katika afya, right? We're going to talk about how we heal the healthcare ecosystem. When I do this, we'll go to the next slide. When I do this, we'll go to the... Thank you. Next slide. All right, so this is overall the giant problem that we're attacking, and I'll talk about exactly which part of the problem we're attacking. In Tanzania, a study by the World Bank says that 4 out of 10 health visits at a primary care are misdiagnosed. So we know this, by the way. Magonjwa favorite ni UTI, malaria, and typhoid, right? Ukiwa na homa, if you go to a primary healthcare facility, you have one of these 3 things. Now, 4 out of 10 patients who go to the primary health level are misdiagnosed. And it's not for a lack of trying. A lot of organizations and the government is trying very hard to solve these problems. Na hapa tulipofika is a big step from where we used to. And this is largely because of unskilled healthcare providers, lack of resources, and generally a lack of availability of healthcare providers. These problems all come together to cause the results that we see on that side, which is poor healthcare, increased healthcare costs, misuse of antibiotics, and distrust in the health systems. Some of the places we work, una uwezo wa kununua antibiotics za shilingi 200. That is 1 capsule. You can buy one antibiotic capsule, go home, and then come back mchana, after mlo mchana, to get your next antibiotic, right? And all of these are having drastic problems that we might not see yet right now, but they are going on right now, and they will only get worse over time. Awesome. So I'll take a step back, and we'll talk about how we define data before we talk about how we're using data. At ELSA, data is how we get information. It's the prerequisite that we have to know what to do next, okay? We had 2 options. Either we take data or we take magic. But since magic is unscientific and we don't know what to do with it, we decided to get data. Right? Thank you. The interesting thing about data is that it changes every time. About data, the data that exists changes the nature of the data that exists.
As an example, one of my favorite examples is in Arusha, there's a very dangerous neighborhood. It's called Ungalimitendi, right? I know you've heard it in hip-hop songs about where the tough people like myself come from, but I don't come from there. But yeah, Ungalimitendi was so bad. It was a very dangerous neighborhood. So what the government decided to do was to build houses for police officers in the area. The crime rate plummeted almost overnight, right? Now, the data before this intervention and the data after intervention is different, right? If we were to use this data as a snapshot piece of data to inform our decisions would not be useful after the intervention has happened because the data generation process has fundamentally changed. And this is how we're doing it, actually. And I don't know if we can hit play on that video. If it works. All of our devices on the ground are connected with each other. They all talk to each other. If there is a spike in number of malaria patients, it's known by another healthcare provider who hasn't shown up to work for the past month or so. If I am untrained in diagnosing disease X, as long as there's a pediatrician near me who was diagnosed that the past 10 times, I take the superpowers of that clinician. We're able to leverage data by letting it flow within each other and allow lower level healthcare providers to think like the best within the network of devices. We're taking the knowledge that is present inside the dermatologist or the oncologist in Dar es Salaam and taking it to the villages around Mount Meru, villages around Buguni and Mererani area. And I'll talk a little bit about that some more. So, here's what we're doing about the data problem. I think I already talked about this kidogo. We take the knowledge that is present inside a specialist, we turn it into an algorithm, and we take this algorithm and give it to healthcare providers who have lack of training or experience. So we fill in the gaps that are present in a majority of the country, right? And the way we like to explain this is we take a computer, we let it learn from a doctor, we tell the computer, hey, sit here, talk to this doctor, watch how they're interacting with their patients, pick up a few things, and then we take the computer and put them in a place where there are no doctors. We do this through our own algorithms and our own software, and we work together with all the stakeholders to create a connected ecosystem where our data is not our data, actually. It's the data of the people and the facilities with which they go to. Okay, here's a little snapshot of how our technology looks like. This is how we deployed on mobile phones. We deploy on mobile phones, on tablets, on computer systems that we find there. And frankly, if you're smart enough, you can do these algorithms on pen and paper, but nobody has the time to do that. So we package them into apps that you can use on your phone. We support diagnostic decision-making. We integrate epidemiology, recommend next steps based on national guidelines, and we support English and Swahili. So just a little example here. If this phone is in village A and this phone is in village B, the phone from village A is being used by a specialist and the phone in village B is being used by a non-specialist. After 10 uses of phone A by the specialist, phone E becomes better, or from phone C becomes better, or phone B becomes better. Every time someone with extra knowledge uses the technology, that becomes better for everyone. And everyone in the network becomes better together. So I'll take you through a couple of case studies of our work. And we love this photo because our team member, Kevin, and we laugh at him so much for wearing shorts. But this is our work in the district, of course, supported and funded by DLAB and MCC PEPFAR in partnership with the Meru district. We are working in care and treatment centers, and these are centers where patients or people living with HIV can go to pick up their medication, go for symptom assessment, as well as get treatment. Now, there are a total of 11 CTCs in Meru district, and our technology is in all of the HIV CTCs in that district. This allows them to do something that we thought was simple. We were wrong. But it allows them to do something that they haven't been able to do so far, is to track a patient who hasn't shown up for their medication. Now, the system currently is so fragmented. If a patient comes to my hospital to get medicine, their original hospital or the hospital they're registered at doesn't know whether they picked up medication and from where they picked up medication. Now, the connected nature of our technology allows them to literally find their patient. We all know of, what is it called? Find my what? Find my iPhone? What is it? Find my iPhone. This is similar to that, but for your patients. You're able to dig into the network and say, my patient was supposed, we're still working on collecting this data and putting it together, but we've shown improved tracking, loss to follow-up patients, and better medication adherence. So every time a patient picks, the algorithm learns that this patient is often late to the appointment, this patient has been reported as being a drunk, what is the probability that they will use their medication how they're supposed to? And what is the intervention that the healthcare provider is supposed to do? Given that alone, we're very hopeful that we can reduce some of the massive problems that we're seeing with adherence problems. Okay, great. Second quick case study is, now we're moving from pediatric scene, and one thing that really surprised us is that the diseases that the people in the CTCs are able to identify, the people in the pediatric space are having a hard time identifying. And specifically, this is tuberculosis. And it's a big problem. Healthcare providers were complaining that it's very hard to tell what type of cough this is, right? Given that the patients are moving around and the different epidemiologies of the area. So we have deployed in also 25 health facilities across Meru District, working with all levels of care providers. We have 5 pediatricians in the network, and the rest of them are clinical officers. These 5 pediatricians, every time they use the technology, they make the clinical officers better at what they do. In just some findings here, in Meru District, 92% of providers are reporting higher confidence in health decisions, and all of them are reporting higher confidence in diagnosing and identifying tuberculosis, which was the main problem that they have. Now, being able to identify one disease has a nice little benefit that we've discovered. If I identify one disease, it means I'm ruling out other diseases. What this means is that I can now prescribe more appropriate medication instead of blanket medications to treat whatever you might have, right? We're very excited about this, and we're working again with the Meru District and UNICEF Innovation. Thank you. Awesome. The last one, and my co-founder keeps putting this photo in the slides, but I think we'll work on that. This is in Ado in Kibaha region. So this is, Ados work at drugstores. So this is equivalent to a pharmacy, a lower level, with a shorter amount of training and basically less knowledge around clinical decision making. So here we're working with the drug dispensers to do symptom assessment. A patient comes in, I have a fever, I have a cough. The question is, what is the cause of these conditions? Not what medication should I give them. First, it's what is the cause of this this condition. We then walk through a couple of questions, a question and answer. We do a back and forth like an assistant, and we get to a final decision resting point where here are the most likely ones, and we can rule out some of these other ones after working together and including the national guidelines as well. One of the key findings we have in Kibaha is that we've managed to increase appropriate ORS and zinc prescription for children suffering with diarrhea or vomiting by 3-fold. Now, this is one of the lowest numbers in the country, so we're very, very excited. Okay, this is probably one of my favorite slides. These are the lessons that we've learned so far. So the biggest lessons, I'll stick to maybe 3 of these. I won't do all of them. But the biggest top 3 lesson that we've learned is that measuring performance is very, very hard. Now, if I take the algorithm and I ask it 10 questions, I can grade it. I can say or you have 0.72 F1 score, or whatever measure I want to use. But that's never enough. It's the combination between the technology and the healthcare provider that eventually makes the decision. So this means that the technology has to be able to be explainable, interpretable, and transparent to the person using it. If I'm using this technology and it's very hard for me to use it, I'll do one of two things, which you've noticed, by the way, is either I'll stop thinking and I'll just take whatever, or I will just ignore because someone told me to use it, but I want to use it as part of my decision-making process. So measuring performance is very difficult. If someone knows how to do it, please tell us. We're working on it, and we're working in partnership with the WHO and the ITU group on artificial intelligence for healthcare to try and create a benchmark for this. But it's been 1.5 years now, and we've barely made any progress because of how hard this is. Okay. Maybe second thing is that patient data is complicated. So I'll mix patient data and probabilities together. Patient data is very complicated. We don't want patient data. Nobody wants us data. So what we do with that patient data is we don't take it. We leave it in the facilities. All our algorithms learn in a distributed manner. So when one facility is asking for data about their patient from another facility, a request comes from this phone to that phone to get the data, brings it back. No one in the middle has access to it. So the data belongs to the health facilities. Our algorithms are there to support the decisions that they're making and build local epidemiological models. The impact of this is massive. Patients from Bagala can go to Mbezi, get treated with the same algorithm that they would find and the same epidemiology that they would find in their home place, right? This is massive, and we're very excited about trying this out as we're growing into different areas. The last one is humans don't understand probability. Humans don't like probabilities. Humans like to say that they don't like mathematics. So if you're going to build a solution, don't be like us. Save yourself 6 months and don't reduce the number of numbers you're showing to lower level healthcare providers. Right? Less numbers, better. More visuals, better. Okay. Just to close this with what we're working on now, as we're bringing the technology together, we are working on building an ecosystem of care so that the health algorithm that treats you at the health facility can come home with you. And when you go back to the hospital, that mafua you had yesterday, that headache you had 3 days ago, all of it comes together so that the doctor can make an even better decision. And when you go home, the algorithm is there to monitor you based off of the recommendations that the doctor has given you and the key things that the doctor has seen. So the algorithm is your caretaker. It's your algorithm with your data. No one else has to have the data. You walk around with your assistant. That is all yours. And I think that's the last slide. Yes, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Ali. Quite interesting. Tumemwelewa Ali. Tumemwelewa kweli kweli. One of the things ambazo tunazo kama wanadamu, lakini wanadamu wa Kitanzania, ni kwamba ni pale tu ambapo una homa ndipo unapokumbuka kuna hospitali. Kweli uongo? Na wengi wetu sio tu unakumbuka kuna hospitali, unakumbuka kuna tangawizi, kuna panado au aspirin, na unakumbuka kumbe labda sikuwa nimelala mapema, unaenda kulala mapema ili ile homa iishe. That's what happens. Lakini when you come back to the digital world, it doesn't work like that completely. Right? Kwa hiyo naomba tuweze kuengage Ali na timu yake. Megan na wengine wamefanya kazi kwa muda mrefu sana kuja na hizi findings, na hizi ni it's just like kadogo tu wana a lot of data kwenye repository zao, a lot of data. Wame interact na community health workers wengi, physicians wengi, local government officials wengi sana. Wamekaa kwenye mijadala mbalimbali ya kitaifa na kimataifa. Kwa hiyo wamepata experience kubwa sana kuhakikisha kwamba wanafikisha ujumbe kama huu kwetu sisi. Na rafiki yangu mmoja anaitwa Min angesema hapa they are on the home run. Wanakimbiza sasa kuhakikisha kwamba wako kwenye finali, kuhakikisha wanafunga goli. Kwa naomba maswali, naomba comments, lakini zaidi maswali, kwa sababu maswali yanatufikirisha na yanafanya tujifunze. Can we have questions really, comments? But I prefer questions, yeah, since questions are lessons and they make us to think.
Asante, naomba nikupongeze kuja na wazo zuri na ubunifu mzuri sana. Naamini utabadilisha jinsi gani vituo vyetu vya afya vinafanya kazi Tanzania,
yeah,
na duniani labda. Swali langu ni dogo tu kwamba kila mgonjwa kama ilivyokuwa kwenye kidijitali, prints binadamu wote tufanani. Sijui mistari ya zebra haifanani. Kila mgonjwa is a unique case. Sasa ningependa kufahamu jinsi gani mfumo unatofautisha mgonjwa mmoja wa pressure kwenda kwa mgonjwa mwingine. Mgonjwa mmoja mwenye HIV kwenda kwa mgonjwa mwingine, kwa sababu wote wanaweza wakawa na HIV lakini counts zikawa zinatofautiana, hence treatment zikawa zinatofautiana. Ningependa kufahamu hilo, kwamba system inatofautishaje case na case za wagonjwa, kwa sababu kama nimekusikia na kukuelewa vizuri, kizungu kilikuwa kingi, tunaongelea bracket sort of like diagnostics. Lakini ninachoelewa mimi, ufahamu wangu mdogo niliofanya kazi kwenye hospitali, kila mgonjwa is unique. Mimi naweza nikaenda, kama nilivyotoa mfano, naweza nikaenda na headache kumbe sikulala jana. Mwingine anaenda na headache, damu imepungua. Lakini system imepick tu headache, apewe Panadol, au headache bla bla bla. Hilo ni swali langu. Karibuni mwenye swali jingine.
I think niendelee au nisubiri?
There's a question. Yeah, labda upick 2 3 alafu utajibu. Karibu.
Oh my gosh.
Asante sana Ali for a good presentation. Nienda straight to the point. Nitaka kuuliza tu kidogo kama you ever thought about integrating the system you have with the existing systems. I'm talking about the government systems. Sababu unaonyesha jinsi ambavyo utakuwa na track records the patients. Specifically umeonyesha katika people who are living with HIV AIDS pamoja na TB, and I believe in most of public hospitals there are some of the existing systems which are tracking this kind of information. So I just want to know if you considered having integration of data so that, you know, all those information that you foresee for the facility to have can be integrated to the one that they have in their existing systems. And another question is on the coverage side. On your introduction, I saw you talked about primary health care. I don't know if you meant only private hospital or public hospitals. So maybe you can clarify in that part. Thank you.
Perfect. So can we have one more question, then we respond, and then we'll take 3 questions from the ladies after this question.
Yes, thank you. Nipende kuwapongeza kwa presentation nzuri na kazi nzuri ambayo mnaifanya. Lakini pale ulivyokuwa una present ukawa unasema kwamba wale, yani hii system inategemea input from higher cadre healthcare providers, meaning ni wale specialists ambao wanatoa inputs more. So how do you verify their level of competence na kile ambacho wanakitoa kama kiko sahihi, and how do we monitor the integrity and everything to do with the system that kwa sababu tunatumia artificial intelligence. So that's what I would like to know. Otherwise your system is very good. I think we need to scale it up.
Good question. Mama karibu.
Asante kwa study mnayoifanya. Ninaona hapo mmezungumzia sana, yes, the shortages and the problems with the health care providers. Lakini mnachosite kwenye hiyo mfumo mmemtumia, mnasema physician. I was wondering what type of physician, ni aina gani ya huyo daktari ambaye anakuwa na ile system ya ile nani ya kwanza alafu ita translate kwenye zile nyingine. Na kwa sababu mmeangalia kwenye primary care, either ni zahanati au ni kituo cha afya. Na sasa hapo ukiangalia mmefocus mgonjwa wa kawaida ambaye ni HIV case, ambayo mnafanya follow up for those who lost for follow up.
Yeah.
Sasa lost for follow up inaweza isikupe hiyo picha ya ugonjwa, na kila mmoja na unique au amepresent na aina tofauti za symptoms au na problems za hizo. Lakini hii lost for follow up ni kama organization managerial aspect kwenye system. The same time kwa patients wa TB. And again, kwenda kwenye hii mlio testi, hizo ni za huko male. But you have tested kwenye afya care kwa ado. Yule mtu wa ado tunajua hata elimu yake ni kama mhudumu wa afya. Sasa tuki translate on the epidemiological aspects za kusema mfumo unaweza uka translate from this ukamfanya aweze kufanya treatment, nadhani mnahitaji ku undergo further na kuangalia kwa unpack types za hawa. Mnapozungumza general kama hivi kwa mtu wa kawaida wa general person is okay, lakini when you come to a medical personnel ambaye anataka kuangalia hii management ya patient, lazima muangalie makundi yake na ni aina gani ya ugonjwa, na kwa sababu kila patient anakuja hivi, kusudi tusije tukageneralize hiki kitu simple like that without looking what will be the cons and cons if a toy ikichukuliwa na wale health care provider wakaichukua hivyo na patients ya client au general population ikachukulia hivi, kuna implication. Kwa nadhani there are other elements ambazo mnatakiwa kuziingiza ili muone ni jinsi gani. And again you can start with a primary level kama mna test tu, lakini sio kitu cha kuwa kinakwaje. And finally you need to integrate na kuangalia mifumo mingine inayo collect data sasa hivi na hiki tunachokuja nacho, because in the health care industry kuna almost 2,000 ya apps na kila mmoja anakuja na kitu chake. Lakini the ministry would like to coordinate and also integrate with the others so that we don't duplicate, badala yake support on the existing, then move further for improvement rather than starting anew, which will end up without scaling up, without moving. The resources nyingi zinakuwa zimetumika. Asante sana. Otherwise,
asante mama, asante. Swali la mwisho dada pale, alafu tuweze aliweze kurespond. Dada karibu.
Asante. Kwa majina naitwa Joyce Gerard Mbilinyi from DIT. Thanks Ali for awesome presentation, but my question is, how do you give assurance on privacy of informations ambazo patient anatoa? Like, if I heard you properly, you talked about the doctors only communicate about the data that the patient has just given out. But what if one among the doctors communicating is my dad and I'm a patient and I don't want maybe my dad to know about my disease? What am I going to do about that? I mean, the assurance on privacy. Yeah, patient's data.
Perfect. Ali?
Thank you very much. Good question. I have Megan here as well. Now? Swanglish.
Ali, naomba atumie mic manake hapo kwenye stage kuna blind spots fulani.
Okay, so. Get more.
Asante.
My mom, this one's fine. My mom is Sukuma, and she would say mashikolo mageni. It's the first time I'm using that, so I've learned something new today. Sawa. So, fortunately or unfortunately, nimeandika the questions, ila nimechanganya my cards, so nitaenda out of order kidogo, whichever card comes first. Or maybe I can start with the last one about privacy. Changamoto moja tuliopata recently ni kwamba moja ya simu zetu, devices zetu iliibiwa. Alright? Na kama organization ambayo we value patient privacy and we don't want to own that data, it means that some of the data is not totally lost, lakini, which means that mtu yoyote akiweza kuifungua application akaona the data, ataweza kutambua flani have something. So maybe I can approach that question through that perspective of how we ensure kwamba privacy ya mgonjwa is full circle. Na data zote kwenye system au mfumo or whichever word we choose to use it, ziko encrypted. In fact, ziko encrypted at different levels. The data is encrypted at the first level, so this is it's called personally identifying information. This data is only decrypted by one person. Na huyo ni primary physician wako, right? And that role can be changed by the district AIDS coordinator or someone from the district level. So the data is encrypted. If you are able to, I know there's probably a lot of good hackers hapa. Ukiweza kuhack system ukapata the data, you just have long strings of data you cannot interpret. So when it comes to privacy of things like that, the data is fully encrypted end to end. In fact, it's only decrypted pale unapoichukua kuisoma, so daktari anapochukua kuisoma. That's the only point it's decrypted. But everywhere along the way, it's an encrypted long string of data. And preventing someone like a family member from knowing your health condition, that's beyond my experience. Lakini, if you are responsible for your own data, which is what we're trying to do, alafu your data gets into the hands of like your father or someone like that, we would expect you to be a bit more careful about how you manage your data. So we train all of the doctors as well we remind them on the good practices of data and data sharing. But otherwise, I think Megan might have a better answer, but please see her afterwards. Okay. Kuna swali, a common theme around how do we differentiate patients, one patient from another. Huyu patient anakuja na baggage yake, huyu anakuja na baggage yake. These patients are different. This one had malnutrition as a child, this one didn't. They're predisposed to different things. And this is a hard question. The short answer to this question, I'll give a longer answer. The short answer is conditional probabilities. But now for the more socially acceptable answer. In the algorithm, you are able to set existing conditions. So here's a simple question. What is the probability that huyu ana malaria given that hatumi chandarua? So that given that is very important, right? And the whole algorithm takes that into account. So this second part of the given that is what we get from EMR or EHR systems. This is the existing information. This is what we want to define the patient as. It's the culmination of all of their medical history, maybe their likes and dislikes. Like if you put all of this on this other side of the given that, you can get to a better answer than if you chose to think about this without considering that, which is what we do generally speaking as humans because we are limited in the dimensions that we can think. And this is where personalized healthcare comes in. So if I see you here every weekend, you have the same complaint, my algorithm starts to understand better and better the type of person that you are. Kesho kutwa, if I'm not here and another doctor comes in, or if you go to another health facility, your history is not erased. The information about how to best treat you travels with you. Right? I'm going to batch two questions together around integrating with existing systems. So one of the things that we heard on our first pitch day to D-Lab is that Tanzania kuna mifumo mingi sana. Unaleta mwingine wa nini, right? And it's a big deal. There's so much fragmentation So we don't want to be another health app. In fact, we don't like using the word app at all because we have that image that it brings. We think of ourselves as a layer. So imagine you're cooking food and you just add salt, just add ELSA to your data. We don't want to bring our own technology. We only bring our technology when there is no existing infrastructure, which is a big problem in large parts of the country. Otherwise, we want to work with what is there. It's even cheaper for us, right? So we don't want to bring more apps. Only when there is no alternative do we bring our own package solution. But otherwise, we're very much excited to work with government and other stakeholders. We're in conversations with NACP, and we are for the Mirror or CTC3 system, as well as we are working on conversations with GoThomas to integrate there. And these two answers should have given one of the answers around the types of facilities we work with. So far, 97% of them 90% of them need public health facilities, right? Which means two things. One, tunafikia watu wengi zaidi, and two, I'm a bad business person, because in the public sector is a hard place to make money from. TFU versus data. Okay, so there is another question on data integrity. This is a good question. Two more. This one and then another one. Data integrity is a hard question. If all of us are training the same algorithm, it won't know where to go, right? I have different experience, you have different experience, you have different experience. Some of us will be lying to it, some of it will not be lying to it, and it will end up just average of all of us. We don't want average, we want the best. And how we're doing this is the algorithm does semi-autonomous learning. So while it is learning on the ground, the changes, the majority of the changes need to be approved by a set of physicians and clinicians that we work with, right? And overall, anything that is flagged is brought to their table and they review it. And currently we're doing 2 national studies, one specifically in pediatrics for tuberculosis and one in the ADO system. This is our 3rd year of, out of 4 years in the ADOs. And Mama brought up a very good question. The same app that you give Halila, who's very educated, is different from the app that you give a different health stakeholder. And for this, we have one answer, is we build for the user. So we work with the users, kuelewa wapi changamoto ziko. So we usually bring 2 things, vifuniko vya makopo, pamoja na unga wa ngano. And we ask them how
co-founder wa Ali asimame. A hand of applause to Ali's co-founder. This is Megan. Anakuaga in the background sana, lakini ni miongoni mwa wale wanaohakikisha kunaendelea. Team ya Ali, nadhani tulikutana miaka iliyopita. Kama kuna Wachaga humu ndani mka vibrate kidogo. Mnaweza kumuuliza maswali mengi zaidi. You can ask about proposal writing. How did you come up with the idea? How did you come from a crazy idea to an actual product na kadhalika? Tuulizane maswali, tuhakikishe kwamba tunatoka hapa tukiwa tumejaa, tumenona, ili tukienda huko tunakorudi na sisi tuje na vitu vingine. Next time iwe ni wengine mnafanya TEDx talks hapa. Au sio? Jamani, mabibi na mabwana, makofi kwenu nyie. A hand of applause to yourself. Sasa before naomba mnipe tu muda kidogo, we're about to get done. Can I ask you to wiggle your shoulders? Wiggle basi. Wiggle, me I can see you. Na hata nyie mnaotoka mnenda nje, na mimi wiggle tu, wiggle huko mnakoenda. Fingers, wiggle your fingers a little bit. Wiggle your fingers a little bit. Wiggle your head a little bit. Kidogo. Miguu hapo ilipo, wiggle. Hapo ulipokaa, yani wiggle kiuno kidogo. Just tell yourself 40 more minutes. Sisiki, 40 more minutes. Tuski. 40 more minutes. 40 more minutes. Data Tamasha 2021 tunaambia oye, Data Tamasha 2021. Data Tamasha 2021. Are we ready? Hapana jamani, are we ready? Are we ready? Yeah. Are we ready? Yeah. Are we ready? Yeah. All right, without further ado, I'd love to invite the last moderator for the last session for the day. This is none other than Omar Bakari, Mr. D-Lab Director. Karibu sana, makofi kwa wake Medina Mbwana.
Bila ya kupoteza muda, ningependa ni mwalike panelist wangu wa kwanza, Dr. Anna Nswila. Karibu sana. Naamini Dr. Anna Nswila, nikianza kuzungumza utaalamu wake na experience yake, tunaweza tukakaa mpaka kesho kutwa hapa. Lakini naamini yeye ndo mtu pekee humu ndani ambaye ana muda mrefu kwenye health sector kuliko mtu mwingine yoyote humu. Kwa sababu ameweza kuifanyia haki hii sekta kwa miaka 40 kazini. Akiwa kama mkurugenzi kutokea Wizara ya Afya mpaka idara ya afya ya TAMISEMI. Na nimemchukua leo maksudi kabisa kwa sababu yeye alikuwepo wakati hatuzungumzii digital, na sasa akaendelea kuwepo kidogo wakati tunazungumzia digital. Sasa anatuangalia tu, lakini tutamsikia katika hii session. Karibu sana Dr. Anna. Lakini mwingine ningependa nimkaribishe Bwana Oswald Luoga kutoka PAS. Najua wana mambo mengi sana kuhusiana na data use partnership. Yuko jamani kutoka PAS? Haya. Mwingine ningeomba kumwalika Dr. Isaac Liatu kutoka IHI, ambaye najua na wenyewe Ifakara kwenye health sector wamekuwa kwa muda kiasi. Lakini mwingine ningemuomba dada yangu Nabila aweze naye kuja kujoin hapa kwenye supply chain management kama walivyoweza kufanya. Hawa ndio nitakuwa na panelists nao sasa hivi, lakini na nyie vile vile kutokana na interest ya time mtakuwa miongoni mwa timu iliyokuwepo. Lakini mtu wa mwisho ambaye ningependa aweko ni Humphrey Mkali from RTI. Humphrey? Is he around? From RTI? Okay, maybe they're watching us virtually. Sasa, jamani karibuni. It is very good to hear that there are some potential innovations that are happening. Lakini health sector in relation to data ni sector ambayo iko nyeti kidogo. Na umesikia wadau wanazungumzia privacy, security na kila kitu. Lakini labda ningeanza na Dr. Anna. Dr. Anna, from your experience, hebu mgegawa hizo haraka haraka basi ili tuendelee. Dr. Anna, from your experience, kuna umuhimu gani watumizi ya data katika primary healthcare ambako asilimia kubwa ya wananchi ndo wanakoanzia huduma, yani huduma zao ndo yani mahitaji yao yanaanzia pale. Je, unafikiria data itatubadilisha vipi katika primary healthcare? Na unafikiria labda kwa experience yako ya miaka 40 unaweza ukatuambia nini kwenye hili?
Asante. Kama alivyoeleza kuwa tumeongea hapa data maeneo yote kutoka asubuhi.